back at it with Dwight's Bites. To be honest, I was feeling a little, let's just say angry. And I find that this is a really good way to kind of like talk out and share kind of some of the frustrations that I'm sitting with. Obviously, this isn't personal grievances and stressors and stuff like that. But I find that this is very therapeutic to kind of talk about and name names to some of the things that are really stressing us out. So let's get into this, and I'd like to start off with this week's Dwight's Bites with some good news, I would say, and we're going to read from this is from the New York Post. But if you live in New York City, I highly recommend you following The Thorn, which is, I don't know if it's a DSA adjacent or DSA, a sponsored, just kind of like a weekly digest. It comes out every Monday morning of things that are happening in New York City from a socialist lens. Highly recommend it. And this is no exception. A news story I saw this morning came out in the New York Post. It was from this weekend, and it says, "Vandals scrawl Brooklyn housing court building with graffiti." So what did they say? Eat the landlords! Vandalism reading Eat the Landlords scene at a Brooklyn housing court. A suspected group of tenant activists. By the way, who is not a tenant activist? Like, most people in New York City are tenants. So, like, are you just saying that, like, some people are not okay with being brutalized by this landed gentry? Obviously, it's the New York Post, and the answer is yes. They don't see this as the impoverished many. They just view this as a few rabble-rousers. Oh, remind me later to tell you a story about something that I heard outside of the offices of the New York Post. Anyway, it says, a suspected group of tenant activists vandalized Brooklyn housing court with spray paint, bike locks, and a baseball bat early Friday. The fifth attack on city courthouses since June, sources told the Post. Not enough IMO. Just after midnight, 6 people defiled Kings County Housing Court at 141 Livingston Street, spray painting "Eat the Landlords" on its glass doors and using spray foam and bike locks to seal the entrance, sources said. So pretty good notes. I hope we're all taking them down. Who says this? The scofflaws also use stencils to write in red paint, "Eviction equals violence" and "Stolen land." They had a baseball bat on hand to bash the automatic door sensor, too, according to sources. So by Friday afternoon, the graffiti had been removed. I don't want to say any more about this, except pretty cool, guys. Keep it up. This is direct action, right? No one got hurt, and they were disrupted in their bad process, right? This is a bad process that is landlord-friendly. This housing court is the state enabling landlords to continue their wealth. Moreover, too, and this is a point that I want to make that I think we should also think about when it comes to landlords, is that landlords often talk about real estate, or real estate is often talked about in terms of an investment, right? An investment. And what is the thing about investments is that they're not sure things, right? They're not sure things. I mean, there are few investments that are, quote, sure things, like let's just say a T-bill, a treasury bill. But that's backed by the United States government, right? So, it's possible that the United States government might implode, inshallah. But but it's, so you're just utilizing that guarantee. But ultimately, all investments have certain elements of risk. So with real estate, why should landlords feel entitled to steady profits? If they buy a building for $1 million and it's paid off within 5 years, and every 5 years after, every year after that, they're supposed to make $100,000 because that's, the rent that they're going to get from the tenants. Why shouldn't we treat real estate speculation or landlordship as an investment with some amount of risk, like any other instrument of investment? There's no fucking guarantee that says that they have to make a certain amount of money. They should be able to accept a down quarter or a down year, which is exactly what's happening now. Unfortunately, in extremely tenant-heavy cities, let's just take New York City as an example, most of the governor's fundraising comes from landlords. So look at what happens. Anyway, this is an extremely cool thing. I think we should have more of this. Let's move on here. This was a very interesting article that I read last week on the 15th of October by Steve Matthews in Bloomberg. And it's something that we need to bring attention to. The title is Tax Burden Equal to 70% Crushes Americans Unable to Pay. 70% tax rate. Now, makes you question, 70%, who are they talking about here? Are we talking about the rich? The people that are always afraid of taxes? No, let's keep reading. Millions of low-income Americans are locked into poverty thanks to U.S. tax policy, the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta researchers say. About 1/4 of lower-income workers effectively face marginal tax rates of more than 70% when adjusted for loss of government benefits, a study led by the Atlanta Fed researcher director David Altig found. That means that for every $1,000 in gained income, 700% goes to the government in taxes or reduced spending. In some cases, there's no gains at all. So before we continue here, I think most of us probably have an idea of what this is about, right? When you are at a certain level, you are of income, of low income, you are entitled to things like Medicaid or, housing assistance or certain types of welfare that the state provides. Again, not that there's much to be said in America, but some amounts of that thing. So when you make, let's say, $1 more than that income level allows you to get as a benefit, then those benefits go away. So the effective tax rate that they're talking about here is like a 70% tax rate. And I think they're entirely correct to call it a tax rate like that, because we need to recognize, what you get for your income as a poor person versus as, a billionaire or an extremely rich person. So let's keep reading. Poorer families may rely on Medicaid insurance, welfare programs, food stamps, housing vouchers, and tax credits that are based on family incomes. Small increases to wages can bring big losses of benefits, reinforcing a negative cycle in which workers aren't rewarded if they improve their skills or pay. And for the record here, this is Bloomberg, obviously. So, it's like saying, oh, they just need to have higher skills, in order to make more money. That is not how it works. But anyway, just wanted to point that out. This is a perverse incentive that says you shouldn't try to make yourself better. God, listen to that coded language, said the Atlanta Fed president, Raphael Bostich, who is leading a virtual conference Thursday intended to focus attention on the problem. They are not dumb. It's on us to actually change those incentives so that people understand what the potential is and move forward towards opportunity. Stunning admission, by the way. For this guy to just be like, they're not dumb. Like, the coded language implies, like, we are the managers of these people. Just as a side note. So a pretty stunning quantification of something that we all kind of implicitly knew. And they go on here to talk about generational poverty. They are talking to a university president of Broward College in Fort Lauderdale. And he says, we think about the student who inevitably may make the decision, unfortunately, not to move up the economic ladder simply because of the benefits that they may lose. These are the kinds of challenges that perpetuate generational poverty. That is inevitably the challenge we are trying to address and the cycle we are trying to break. This is the thing that always fucking drives me crazy when I see things like drives for financial literacy for low-income people, because the implication is just to say, like, oh, they're dumb and they don't know how to manage their money. That's the reason they're poor. No, the reason they're poor is because they don't have money. Like, come on. And this illustrates, it deftly breaks down that argument, because it's like they know extremely well how much money they're getting and how to get the maximum utility at the level of income that they have. It's incredible to me. So I want to jump out of this article here. Oh, and this is, give me a second here. The highest tax burdens. This is the graph for the highest marginal tax rates for lowest income Americans. And the number one tax rate at 55% is Connecticut, which is incredible to me because Connecticut is supposedly the richest state in the country, yet the highest tax rates for the lowest incomes. How fucking disgusting is that? Oh, before I forget, and I want to move on to the next article, but before I forget, I was asking to be reminded of the New York Post thing. I was part of a protest on a fucking horribly rainy, cold day in front of News Corp on, on 6th Avenue in Manhattan. News Corp owns, among many things, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, and the New York Post is one of them. And we were protesting with the Yemeni American Merchant Association, I think, for the New York Post. God, don't quote me because I should remember this, but it was something that the New York Post said about Ilhan Omar. And it was disgustingly Islamophobic and racist and fucking terrible. But we were protesting out there and protesting against the Post, and the protest specifically with the Yemeni American Merchants Association is because of the disproportionately large amount of Yemeni Americans that own bodegas in New York City. And so the protest was also a boycott to boycott the New York Post, and that the bodegas were not going to carry the New York Post in their stores, and hopefully take a hit to their bottom line and stuff like that. Obviously, the point of the New York Post is to be this, pablum. Occasionally you get some interesting reporting out of it, I gotta be honest. But I remember these two middle-aged, probably, 50-something white guys coming out of the New York Post and seeing this protest, and them saying, like, to the Yemeni community, who was, and I was definitely, in the minority there as a white man, and saying to this community, like, but we love the New York Post, and then kept walking, like, kind of laughing at what they had said to just disrupt that. And I remember thinking, I still get the hair on the back of my neck standing up on end thinking about that, because that was such a passive-aggressive use of their privilege to just say that and walk away knowing, like, I will not be materially affected by A, saying that to somebody, or B, affected by the thing that they are protesting about. And I remember I was like, I'm not a violent guy, I think, but I was like, motherfucker, if there's some dudes that fucking deserve it, Jesus Christ. All right, we move on. Parody, allegedly. It was a story, right? It was a story. This could have happened in fucking Minecraft. All right, fuck everyone. All right. So the next thing specifically about taxation is also about the IRS. And we all know what an IRS audit is, right? I mean, basically, the tax system in the United States is on the honor system, right? You write things in, and they, are supposed to cross-check it in some whatever weird way that they're able to. And the way that they keep you honest is through the threat of audits. And an audit is basically just like, hey, you're saying that you claim this amount of income, verify that for us, and also you're saying that you deducted this from your taxes. Show us the receipts. Show us that you actually had these expenditures that you need not be taxed on. It's an extremely onerous and burdensome process, and I'm frankly terrified of being one that gets audited. But this is something that came out in September, and I've been sitting on this, and I was waiting for a time I thought appropriate to bring it up. And this is it. And so the question was, who is audited most in the United States, right? Because presumably the kinds of people that should be audited are like the ultra rich, the people that claim the most exemptions on their taxes, claim the most income that shouldn't be taxed, claim the most expenditures that should be, written off and shit like that, losses that should be written off. And this happens in extremely complex situations, like, there's a reason that there are armies of lawyers going through bankruptcy and court apparatuses that are extremely huge and onerous and burdensome. So we should think that people with extremely complicated tax situations, like the ultra wealthy, would be the most that are taxed. You'd be wrong. This is by Nicole Lynn Pesci, and this is from MarketWatch, and the title of it is, "This map shows where American taxpayers are most likely to be audited, and it's certainly not Washington, D.C." Firstly, I don't even know why they mentioned that, because it's not even like where the most people... Anyway, the article reads as such: "The taxman cometh after the working poor as much as the rich, if not more." Starts with a fucking limerick. Okay. As allegations that Donald Trump paid only $750 in federal taxes in 2016-2017, and nothing in all of the 10 of the previous 15 years. It's stunning to me. It's renewed conversations about the fairness of the U.S. tax system. A map showing where Americans are most likely to be audited has come back into the spotlight. The graphic, first published in the industry journal Tax Notes last year and reported by ProPublica, reveals that the 5 most audited counties in the country are all predominantly black, rural areas in the deep South. Audit rates are also very high in the largely Hispanic communities in South Texas, the counties where Native American reservations in South Dakota, as well as the poor white counties in eastern Kentucky's Appalachia region. In fact, the audit rates in those areas were more than 40% above the national average. But the states that tend to be home to middle-income, largely white populations, including New Hampshire, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, have the lowest audit rates. What's more, I'm going to fucking scream at this. What's more, Humphreys County, Mississippi, where the median annual household is just $26,000, is audited at a rate 51% higher than Loudoun County, Virginia, where residents boast the highest median income in the country at $130,000. What is more of a stark explanation than that? You're half as likely to get audited in the highest median income county in the country than you are in one of the poorest in the country. That is fucking sick. So what's going on? One thing these poorer communities have in common is that many residents claim the Earned Income Tax Credit, an anti-poverty program for low to moderate income working individuals and couples, particularly those with children. And while the general rule is that the more money you make, the more likely you are to be audited, it turns out that Earned Income Tax Credit recipients are the exception. The IRS audits Earned Income Tax Credit recipients whose annual income falls under $20,000 at higher rates than all but the richest Americans. Those recipients were audited at twice the rate of taxpayers with income between $200,000 and $500,000 in 2017. This is the sick part. The IRS has also suffered crippling budget cuts over the past decade, losing almost 30,000 full-time positions between 2010 and 2019, and leaving the tax collection agency with fewer auditors than it has had at any point since World War II. As a result, the overall audit rate has been falling, but while the IRS has audited the rich less, it's continued to audit the poor at about the same rate. And this is the money shot here, folks. And that's because the IRS Commissioner, Charles Rettig, has admitted that auditing lower income taxpayers is easier and less expensive than going after wealthier ones. It's just easier, guys. It's easier to crush somebody with a simpler tax code than it is for an ultra wealthy individual, because that takes more resources to stick it to them. And in fact, here, why would a ruling class administration and the Obama administration take away this many resources from the IRS? And there's another headline here that says, this former top Obama official says auditing more rich people would raise $500 billion in personal income tax. That's why they don't want to give more resources to the IRS, because they're going to find more and they're going to get more from them. Simple as that. Period. Full stop. It's fucking sick. It's draconian. And as Shane has brought up many times, it's like Byzantine. Overly complicated, goes nowhere, bullshit. That's fucking disgusting to me. Another news item here that was sent to me by @JushDogger, JushDogger. And they sent to me this. I always appreciate when people send me things, because I think they just like want to hear, me. Let's do it. I'll read. I'll give you guys a little present. I'm going to read this article title, and then I'll do what everybody wants to hear. This is from WVLT. It's a CBS affiliate in Knoxville, Tennessee. University says students may be intentionally getting coronavirus so that they can sell antibody plasma. BYU Idaho is urging students to both seek financial and mental health resources at the university rather than attempting to contract the deadly virus. Brigham Young University's campus in Idaho said this week it is investigating claims that some students are intentionally trying to get sick with COVID-19 in order to sell their plasma for cash. The university said it plans to suspend any students caught attempting to contract the virus. How would you even do that? Like, how would you even catch people on that? Like, they're having fucking makeout parties? Come on. They're Mormons. Oh, this is actually more interesting than I thought. I got to be honest. I'm entirely stunned here because I didn't even know that this was like legal. I was looking at the cost of attendance to BYU Idaho, and there's two different prices. I'm like, what is it? In-state, out-of-state? No. There's a price for Mormons and there's a price for non-Mormons. And let me do the math on this because this is like stunning to me. Wow. Okay. It is 34% more expensive to be a campus student at BYU Idaho if you're not a Mormon than if you are a Mormon. The Mormon cost, and there's another one here, which is even more boggling to me. I guess I really don't think about this stuff. There's a single and a married price. This is crazy. Anyway, the cost per semester for a Mormon at BYU Idaho is $6,300, and it's $8,500 if you're not Mormon. I don't know if that's just a way for them to like keep non-Mormon people out. This is all new to me. Please, somebody explain to me what the fuck is going on here. But the fact that, and you know, the students are trying to infect themselves with COVID to sell the plasma, presumably with the antibodies in them, and citing the fact specifically that they need it for financial reasons, should tell you something. Perhaps we should maybe not be burdening them, our young people, with a lifetime's worth of tuition debt. That's just me. So speaking of that point, there's another metric here that came out in the New York Times last week by Jason DeParle, and this one hit me right through the gut. 8 million have slipped into poverty since May as federal aid has dried up. 2 new studies show the effect of the emergency $2 trillion package known as the CARES Act and what happened when the money ran out. After an ambitious expansion of the safety net in spring saved millions of people from poverty, the aid is now largely exhausted and poverty has returned to levels higher than before the coronavirus crisis, 2 new studies have found. The number of poor people has grown by 8 million since May, according to researchers at Columbia University, after falling by 4 million at the pandemic's start as a result of the $2 trillion emergency package known as the CARES Act. So what did that say? The CARES Act stopped half of the people falling into poverty from falling into poverty as a result of losing their incomes. Again, this is the fucking perverse thing. And you know how these aid packages are just like half measures. Because it was not their decision to get fired. It was not their decision to have a pandemic. It had nothing to do with their skills, their abilities as an employee, or anything like that. It has to do with exogenous factors outside of their control. So, like, what's the point? As we heard in one of the previous articles, like, they need to develop skills and stuff like that and not say no to opportunities. That was the thing from the Fed. It has nothing to do with that because ultimately, your station in life and your position on Maslow's hierarchy is decided upon entirely by your capitalist employer. And given the fact that only, in disaster capitalism, only when a disaster occurs and many hundreds of thousands of people die from a disease, does there have to be a political solution, like a non-institutional political solution? Like this isn't something that was not governed by the Department of Health and Human Services. Like, it's an emergency measure that gets bogged down by bullshit tit-for-tat politics. God, I sound like a common sense solutions. No. But like the fact that these people were held out of poverty just because of this and it's dried up is fucking disgusting. And it also goes on to say, using different definition of poverty, researchers from the University of Chicago and Notre Dame have found that poverty has grown by 6 million people in the past 3 months, with circumstances worsening most for Black people with children. We're going to get back to that in a minute. Those numbers are very concerning, said Bruce Meyer, an economist at the University of Chicago and author of the study. They tell us people are having a lot more trouble paying their bills, paying their rent, and putting food on the table. Even if we just looked at those 3 things, right? And if we looked at a household budget and you look at bills, like what kind of bills? Electric bill, your phone bill, your internet bill, and then paying your rent, and then putting food on the table. All of those costs go directly into the hands of extremely rich people, right? Paying their rent. Who's that rent check going to? A landlord that owns property, that has wealth. In a lot of cases, probably some fucking private equity firm that's like bought up like 15% of the residencies in the Eastern Seaboard or some shit. Bills like the phone bill or the electric bill. Well, the electric bill or any utility, for instance, should give a perfect example why they should be municipalized. Because if they're owned collectively by the residents, they could say, hey, maybe we're going to fucking take a break this month because we all lost our jobs. Or, for instance, if it was like a T-Mobile bill, those dollars go directly into the hands of the shareholders. And why was there not a moratorium put on bills like that? Because the shareholders are already the rich people that are funding that are the donors for the people that govern us. And food on the table, like the fact that we even need to think about whether or not we can eat, that's some failed state shit. So fuck you. Underscoring those concerns, the Labor Department reported on Thursday that 886,000 people filed new claims for unemployment benefits last week. It's been about that much since like April. I'm talking nearly 1 million people every week losing their jobs. And I'm fucking serious about this. If you look at like the Department of Labor and you see how many people have been new job loss claims every week. I'm trying to look at it right now. Yeah, I mean, about 1 million people per week, every week, since the beginning of pandemic, and obviously it was more in the beginning, have been losing their jobs, filing for unemployment assistance. That's not sustainable. That's not doable. That's not doable in the long run. The recent rise in poverty has occurred despite an improving job market since May, an indication that the economy has been rebounding too slowly to offset the lost benefits. And now the economy is showing new signs of deceleration amid layoffs and a surge of coronavirus cases and deadlocked talks in Washington over new stimulus. And it continues today. Look, we're going to see where it's going to go. I don't want to make any promises. I mean, frankly, we're thinking it's going to be one of the best bills since the one that we did with the CARES Act. We all remember the CARES Act. I just got a little carried away with myself there. I think, unironically, like I literally think that Nancy Pelosi is trying to hold off this shit until after the election. And the lady has $30,000 refrigerators in one of her homes. They will never understand the fucking crushing stress that it is to not have money. I swear to God, sometimes I can smell it coming out of my pores of just like the stress of like, and it's, I was thinking about this the other day too. It's like so fucking insidious that like you get notifications on your phone in your pocket about like, hey, we don't have enough money in the bank account. You're gonna get late fees. It's like you can't even just like wait to get a letter. Like they can just ping you at any time. This also like goes into a larger conversation I was like having in my own head in the last 2 weeks about corporate feudalism and about how nearly every aspect of our lives is governed in some way by a corporation and gearing them towards some sort of success to their dividends to their shareholders. I was like, why can't we can't even just like go on a walk for going on a walk's sake. We have to like quantify it, like make sure we get the steps in our Fitbit. Like why like this obsession with productivity, which benefits an extremely small amount of people. Like they don't even like we don't even remember what the joy is to do something for the sake of just doing it. Just like, when was the last time you did something for yourself that was just for yourself, just for your own personal bemusement? Back when it used to snow, I used to just like do little art things, you know, in the middle of the night in college, like in the snow with a shovel, just to like make a cool little design, just for the shit of it, just for fun. Not because I'm like, oh, let me see if I can monetize this as an art project. Just like doing something for fun. Like doing something for fun is the enemy of the ruling class because it means you're not doing something productive. I fall into this trap. It's a big problem for me. I always feel like I need to be like doing something and feeling productive and feeling like there's something like even just idle time. It's like, am I maximizing my relaxation right now? Because if I don't maximize my relaxation right now, well, then I won't have maximized my relaxation. So I won't be relaxed and I won't be better and effective at the times that I actually do need to be effective. It's sickening and maddening. It's a maddening way to live. Even especially now where we'd have to like actually think about what are the leisure activities that we're doing right now without like, you know, because we're afraid of like falling into depression because of coronavirus and shit, or just saying like, you know, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to take more risks just to stay sane and stop my mental health from plummeting into the fucking ground. It's extremely disorienting. And I use that word purposely because it's like we're not even oriented into the things that we remember that used to make us happy. And, there is a lot of vested interest in making sure that there's not a government safeguard that stops us from feeling skittish and twitchy and afraid that we are going to lose our station in life, at the slightest moment of letting up and just trying to do something for ourselves and not trying to do something for our employer. It's like, I don't know how many of you, like, if you have to like fucking apply to take your PTO, or like, if something happens, like, things in life will always happen. People will die in your family. You need to go take care of them without fearing for your job to be lost. And this isn't unique. I'm not just talking about like hourly work and shit. I'm talking about like salaried people with like masters, like people in the middle class that are working at 120% capacity just to stop from losing their station. Right, to maintain, not even to gain, but to maintain that station, let alone people that are, working hourly wages to just make that dance around. Like, this is the point that I wanted to make earlier in the article about people that have been slipping into poverty and losing their benefits if they earn a little bit more. How fucked up is it that you have to decide how much money you can try to make more because you're just dancing around keeping yourself at a poverty level? That's fucking bananas to me. I'm sorry, that is some failed stage shit. I guess we've come to the end of that article. And I'd like to turn for a moment. We're going to come back to domestic stuff in a minute. But this was a really important thing that I think a little bit of geopolitics that we need to draw some attention to and not lose sight of, because how can I put this? While we are caught up in our domestic issues and, being part of the fucking Trump reality TV fucking existence that we're all living and, just running from outrage to outrage and not knowing what's going on, there are larger forces at work that are simultaneously trying to make sure that they are placed and positioned well as climate change changes our landscape. And there's a reason for this. And I'm going to read something from The Guardian that came out on Friday the 16th. And it's called Freezing Cold War. Militaries move in as Arctic ice retreats. This is by Alec Lund. And the sub-lead is U.S., Russian, Canadian, and Chinese forces are taking an active role in the polar region, but the real threat is the rapidly changing climate. This month, Arctic sea ice reached its second lowest extent on record, and modeling shows it will be completely melt in summer by 2035. But where many see a disaster, some global powers discern an opportunity to secure geopolitical and commercial interests, and military ones. The UK, the United States, and Canada have been among the countries ramping up their Arctic military exercises, and for the past 5 years, photographer and filmmaker Louis Palou has been... it's a great name. Maybe it's Palu? I don't know. Has been taking pictures of soldiers confronting an environment as hostile and deadly as any enemy or force. That's sick. He has photographed blah, 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 blah. There's an element of failure or disaster about to happen in every photograph, or absurdity, Palou said. I broke my ribs twice, I scratched my cornea with ice, and the only time I've ever seen soldiers more afraid than going out in negative 60 degrees Celsius is Afghanistan when you walk through IEDs. What the these are poor children. Like, I'm looking at this picture of like these young kids. It says the caption for it is U.S. soldiers from bases in Alaska trained to ski while attending a course about using snowshoes, survival, and logistics in cold weather conditions. Like, these kids can't be more than fucking 19, and they're all doing the pizza wedge with their skis. They look like these kids are probably from like Florida. You know what I'm saying? Jesus Christ. Following the Soviet collapse, the Arctic was mostly forgotten until 2007, when a submersible planted a titanium Russian flag at the North Pole to highlight Moscow's claim to economic rights over a wide swath of the seafloor there, provoking angry reactions from Washington and Ottawa. Denmark and Canada have since filed their own overlapping seafloor claims. So I don't want to get into too much of this, but no. Let's get into this for a second. Hang on. But the warming of the Arctic has galvanized resource extraction more than environmental concerns. Shipping on the northern sea route along Russia's Arctic coast, which Vladimir Putin hopes will become an alternative to the Suez Canal, is expected to reach 332 million tons this year. 80% of it oil and gas from huge fields on the Yamal Peninsula. The state oil giant Rosneft is drilling the world's northernmost oil wells offshore. I'm fucking failing at this. Keep that in. But I'm failing at this. The state oil giant Rosneft is drilling the world's northernmost oil well offshore and developing what it says will be the world's biggest oil project onshore. Why is that fucking insane? The entire reason that we've accelerated toward this eventuality is because of oil and gas and fossil fuel production. Now they're saying that this is going to open up the opportunity for the largest ever project? Are you fucking kidding me? This is what are we doing, man? As economic interests in the North have grown, so have military patrols to test or defend territorial boundaries. Following the 2019 declaration of the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo that it was, quote, America's moment to stand up as an Arctic nation, the U.S. deployed destroyers off Russia's northern coast in May, and for the first time since the 1980s. In July, the Air Force released its inaugural Arctic strategy. Last month, Senator Dan Sullivan said the U.S. will deploy 100 F-22 and F-35 fifth-generation fighter jets to Alaska. So, a few things to think about here. Colonialization is the worst. Like, before I was recording this, I went into the kitchen and I was like, I made myself a little snack on a little rice cracker with some peanut butter and a little bit of honey on it. And for the record, too, like, I got some nice, like, you know, organic, whatever, non-homogenized peanut butter. Fuck that. Give me Jif. Give me Skippy. Let's go. Anyway, but I was thinking about it and I was just like, the reason that we're seeing so much fucking freaking out of large nations, major nations on Earth, and turning towards neo-fascism is part of a broader point that profits are drying up worldwide. And we've talked about this on previous episodes of Eat the Rich, of talking about the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, which if you haven't heard about, I recommend that you look into. I mean, basically it's saying, like, you know, it's harder and harder for capitalists to maintain fat profit margins, that they have to resort to brutality to just crush labor into submission. And I was thinking, I was like, this is just like all a end result, and capitalism is an end result of colonialism. And this, like, European manifest destiny that, like, we just need to get more. We just need to get more. Like, there's no smart business model behind it. It's just like, we just need more. It's just this mad drive. We just need to get more. And the Arctic may, you know, okay, it might have oil reserves. Who knows what the fuck's underneath there, right? The Earth's crust, blah, 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 drilling and stuff. But, like, how intensely cynical and, like, death-driven is it that that these countries' governments and militaries are looking to duke it out in the face of accelerating climate holocaust? It's fucking insane to me. And that's why I wanted to bring attention to it, because it's like, I don't want my like half of my paycheck taxes goes to the military. I do not want them engaging in this. I don't want them doing this shit. I think this is also a really interesting point about, like, which I think is a fair criticism to make of the Bernie Sanders platform, or maybe just like in the left in general, is like, what does a socialist or what does a leftist foreign policy look like? And again, I'm sure there's a gazillion people much smarter than me that have put a lot of thought into this. I'm merely a lowly rube podcaster. But, like, what does a leftist foreign policy look like? And our military, theoretically, is controlled by a civilian that gets elected every 4 years, right? The commander-in-chief, the president. And not that I have much affection for this current method of governance, the current setup of governance that we have, but, like, I want a president that will say, like, we're not going to do this shit. I don't want resources going into accelerating our deaths. Stop it. Like, fucking stop. I don't know any other way to say it. Maybe I just feel a little bit down this week and don't have as much energy to talk about it. But it fucking it chaps my ass, to say the least. So we're gonna move on here, and there was a ProPublica article that came out October 15th. It was by James Bandler, Patricia Callahan, Sebastian Rotella, and Kirsten Berg. And I highly recommend everybody read it because it talks about the CDC. And I don't want to. I'll summarize it as best I can to aid the article that we're about to read. But basically, if I'm not mistaken, like the Trump administration put like political spies in the CDC and making sure that they weren't reporting or making sure they weren't acting in the interest of the general citizen, and rather just making sure that they were crafting the narrative, one that would not embarrass the Trump administration. That's crazy. And I'm setting that up to say the next article, which I've been sitting on since September. This came out September 15th, and this is from Business Insider. And this is, I've kind of fucking phone rings every time. I swear to God, I'm about to get fucking emotional. God damn it. All right. Here's the deal. The title of this article by Hillary Bruck was, according to the CDC, almost all of the U.S. kids and teens who have died from COVID-19 were Hispanic or black. It goes on to read here, Christopher Hansen was 5 years old when he died from the coronavirus. Jamila Doreen Imani Barber was 17 and had been worrying over an unfinished school assignment. Kimora Lynham was a healthy 9-year-old girl. They are 3 of the more than 121 kids and teens under 21 years old who have died from coronavirus so far across the United States. They were also all black, representative of a disturbing, deadly trend. According to a new report from the CDC, very few children who have gotten sick with the coronavirus have died. Of the, let's just call it 390,000 cases of COVID-19 and a rare infection linked to it, which is pediatric multi-inflammatory syndrome, the CDC recorded that only 121 of those were deadly. So that's 0.03%. And thank goodness that it didn't, this particular iteration of the disease wasn't worse for children. But among those 121 young that's a new word for me, decedents? I guess people that were deceased. Few were white. The CDC reported that just 17 of those recorded fatalities were white children, compared with 35 deaths of black children and 54 Hispanic deaths. The data is horrifying, but not surprising to me, said Dr. Uche Blackstock, founder of Advancing Health Equity, told Insider. Where you see marginalization and disadvantage, you're going to find coronavirus. The data doesn't match up with the demographics of the U.S. as a whole, right? Because white children comprise 50% of the kids in the country, which is much less than the 14% of the is much more than the 14% of the childhood COVID deaths being white children. Black children, meanwhile, make up 14% of that same population, but accounted for more than double their ratio in deaths at 29%. The overrepresentation of Hispanic and Native communities in COVID deaths is even more stark. One of the key reasons the CDC suspects so many of the children of color are dying from the coronavirus is because they live in the same households of adults of color who are more likely to be essential workers and exposed to the virus on the job. Duh. Right? I mean, their risk of being infected is higher than white children. Crowded living conditions, food and housing insecurity, wealth and education gaps, and racial discrimination, as well as a lack of access to care, all will also likely play a role in the higher rate of deaths in black and brown children. In other words, the deaths have nothing to do with their child's color of skin. They're tied to systemic racism that puts their health at risk by subjecting them to living conditions, worse living conditions than their white counterparts. This, we've talked about this before on an episode of Dwight's Bites, and it causes me to just get choked up because, I think the right does a good job of creating these kind of false moral narratives around outcomes. And they say like, hey, this is their fault for making the wrong choices, or this is the result of bad parenting or something. The reality is, what choices do you get to make as a child, as a 9-year-old? Shit, he's even as a 17-year-old. I mean, you are subject to forces greater than you, more than you are from your own free will. And a lot can be said about this with like corporate feudalism as well, for adults. I have less say, and I'm speaking for myself, I have less say in my life than my employer does about my life. I have less say in my life than my employer does about my life. That goes for all of you. That goes for every single one of us. You have less free will over your life than your creditors have over you. Anybody that's been inundated with phone calls from debt collectors like I've been, it ruins you. It totally ruins you, and it gives you the proclivity for depression and substance abuse and stuff. I mean, they have more say about what we do with our time and our lives than we do in our own masquerade of free will. And that's why I think the term corporate feudalism is apt to use as a term, especially now in 2020, because it's like, why were these essential workers needing to go and be in compromising situations to their health? What choice did they have? The choice was either go in with a lack of PPE and go in with a lack of understanding and, purposely obfuscated information about how the disease is transmitted. People that are already unhealthy because, you just can't engage. Who has time to go buy fucking leafy greens and shit versus like ordering shit? It's just a whole array of things that make it harder for you to be healthy when you're under the boot of corporate capitalism, corporate feudalism. It's the choice that they have is either become one of those 1 million Americans that have been losing their job every single fucking week since the beginning of the pandemic, and it was worse in the beginning as far as rate of job losses go, or chance it and hope that I don't bring coronavirus back to my kids. That's why it's so like fucking crazy how much we have to just like white people are melting down with like confronting ideas of like systemic racism. And I remember like Bernie getting shit for this, like in the primaries and stuff. You just can't say everything's racist, man. Come on, man. Come on. It's top to bottom, guys. I don't know what to say it. It's like, as much as it might feel overwhelming to kind of confront the idea that even with our individual actions fighting these smaller phenotypes of how the racism is manifested, it is all part of the same struggle against capitalism, as it is against colonialism, as it is against corporate feudalism, as it is against neo-fascism. And all of those things must be defeated in order for us to stop governments across the world that are considered Arctic nations from like drilling and just like finding this entire other oil reserve. It's fucking crazy. As a side note too, I saw this thing that I tweeted about today that was like, I want to get it here. It was an announcement by like the Pentagon or something. A new monument honoring all military service women has been unveiled in Arlington National Cemetery. And I said, now women too will be honored for getting IED'd, so Halliburton's share price will get up. It's like, what is the importance? Why is the military there? It's to grease the wheels of capitalism, to facilitate capital. Boy, I gotta be honest, I started out this episode feeling like, man, I've got so much like anger I really need to like channel and feel, positive and stuff. But like, this was a real one, man. I appreciate everybody that sticks along with it. And I think in the last episode, I kind of concluded the last Dwight Bites with a little bit of an overture of positivity because I felt bad. I recognize that a lot of the content that we talk about is distressing, and can give you feelings of like despair and hopelessness and stuff. I really am trying to reframe that idea and look at this as kind of like it's like when a football team sits. I'm not a sports guy, clearly, so please don't fucking come down on me for saying this wrong. But it's like when a sports team will sit down and watch videos of their opposing team and analyze it and watch their moves and get wise to it, so that when they go for their go-to moves, we're already a step ahead of them. And that to me is, the purpose of these episodes, and the purpose of Eat the Rich broadly anyway, is to get one step ahead of these fuckers and see through the bullshit and demand. And again, what was done at the Brooklyn Housing Court was pretty fucking cool. We need to demand through direct action and every other fucking arrow that we have in our quiver to demand the kind of future and the world that we want to inherit. Because I sure as shit don't want to live in a world that has Arctic drilling. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I used to like driving cars, and I loved, like, driving fast and racing around and stuff like that. Like, I always dreamed, I was like, oh, I'd love to race a car around a track. But now I'm just like, yo, it's cool, but, like, I'd rather have my grandchildren breathe. Like, it's time for us to step up as a leftist labor movement and demand the things that we want demand the things that we want in the world that we want to live in. Side note, I've been meaning to I've had this song in my head. I don't even know if it's necessarily appropriate for this episode or whatever, but I've had this song in my head for the last, like, 2 months, and I wanted to share it on Dwight's Bites. So hope you enjoy one of my favorite singers, rest her soul, of course. And guys, stay cool. See you next time.
The moment I wake